I was sitting in the ICU, watching my 3-year-old son fight for his life, when my phone buzzed. It was my mother. But instead of asking about her grandson, she said, "Susan, you better not ruin Jennifer's birthday party tomorrow. She's been planning this for months." I stared at that text message, my hands shaking, and I realized something that would change our relationship forever. Hi everyone, I'm Susan, and this is the story of the worst week of my life, and how it opened my eyes to a painful truth about my own family. I'm 28 years old, married to my husband Mike for 6 years, and we have the most beautiful little boy named Ethan. He just turned 3 last month, and he's everything to us. You know how people say your whole world changes when you become a parent? They're not kidding. My family has always been complicated. My mom, Linda, she's 52, and she's always been what you might call a social butterfly. Appearances matter a lot to her. She runs in these social circles where everyone's trying to outdo each other with parties, events, charity galas. Don't get me wrong, she's not a bad person, but sometimes I feel like she cares more about what other people think than what's actually happening in our lives. My sister Jennifer is 25, 3 years younger than me, and she's always been Mom's golden child. Not in a malicious way, but Jennifer just fits better into Mom's world. She's single, works in marketing, lives in this gorgeous downtown apartment, and she throws these elaborate parties that Mom absolutely loves to brag about to her friends. Me? I'm more of the quiet one. I work part-time as a nurse, which Mom never quite understood. Why waste your education on such a stressful job when you could do something more prestigious, she'd say. But I love helping people, and the flexible schedule lets me spend more time with Ethan. For the past few weeks, Mom had been talking non-stop about Jennifer's birthday party. It wasn't just any birthday party. Jennifer was turning 26, and Mom had convinced her to throw this huge celebration. We're talking about renting a venue, hiring caterers, a live band, the works. Mom was treating it like a wedding. "Susan, you have to help with the decorations on Friday," Mom had told me during our last phone call. "And make sure you get Ethan a really nice outfit. All my friends will be there, and I want him to look perfect." I remember feeling a little uncomfortable about that. Ethan is 3. He doesn't need to be a prop for Instagram photos. But I agreed because, well, family is family, right? The party was scheduled for Saturday night. It was Wednesday when everything changed. That morning started like any other. Mike had left early for work, he's in construction, so he starts at 6 a.m. I was getting Ethan ready for daycare when I noticed he seemed a little off. He was usually this bundle of energy, running around, chattering non-stop about dinosaurs or trucks or whatever had captured his imagination that day. But that morning, he was quiet. Clingy. He didn't want to eat his usual breakfast of pancakes and strawberries. "Mommy, my tummy hurts," he said, curling up on the couch. As a nurse, I know that stomach aches in toddlers are usually nothing serious. Maybe he was coming down with a little bug. I took his temperature, 99.2. Slightly elevated, but not alarming. I called daycare and said he'd be staying home. I figured we'd have a quiet day, maybe watch some cartoons, let him rest. But by noon, his fever had spiked to 102. He was lethargic, barely responding when I called his name. That's when the mom in me started to panic, but the nurse in me kicked into gear. I called Mike immediately. "Something's wrong with Ethan. I'm taking him to the ER." "I'm on my way," he said, and I could hear him telling his foreman he had to leave. The drive to the hospital felt like the longest 15 minutes of my life. Ethan was so still in his car seat, just staring out the window with glassy eyes. I kept checking the rearview mirror, making sure he was still breathing. At the ER, they took us back immediately when they saw his condition. His fever had climbed to 104, and he was showing signs of dehydration. The doctor on duty, Dr. Martinez, was concerned about possible sepsis. "We need to run some tests," she explained. "Blood work, urine culture, maybe a lumbar puncture if his condition doesn't improve." A lumbar puncture. A spinal tap. On my baby. Mike arrived just as they were starting the 4. Ethan was crying, not his usual loud, indignant toddler cry, but these weak, heartbreaking whimpers that made my chest feel like it was caving in. "Mommy, I don't like it here," he whispered. "I know, sweetie. The doctors are going to help you feel better, okay?" The next few hours were a blur of tests, monitoring, worried faces. By evening, they'd admitted him to the pediatric ICU. The blood work showed signs of a serious bacterial infection, but they couldn't pinpoint the source yet. "We're starting him on broad-spectrum antibiotics," Dr. Martinez explained. "But we need to monitor him closely. The next 24 to 48 hours are critical." Critical. That word echoed in my head as I sat beside Ethan's hospital bed, watching the monitors track his vital signs. Mike had gone to grab us some coffee, and I was alone with my thoughts and the steady beeping of machines. That's when I remembered to call my family. I called my mom first. My hands were shaking as I dialed. "Hi, sweetheart," she answered cheerfully. Perfect timing. I was just at the party store picking up decorations for Saturday. "You won't believe how gorgeous these centerpieces are going to be." "Mom," I interrupted, my voice cracking. "Ethan's in the hospital." There was a pause. "What? What happened?" I explained everything, the fever, the ER visit, the ICU, the possible sepsis. As I talked, I could hear her moving around, the sound of shopping bags rustling. "Oh my goodness, Susan. That's terrible. But, he's going to be okay, right? I mean, kids get sick all the time." Something about her tone made my stomach drop. It wasn't dismissive exactly, but it wasn't the reaction I expected from a grandmother whose grandchild was fighting a serious infection. "Mom, they don't know yet. That's why he's in the ICU. They're monitoring him around the clock." Of course, of course. "Well, keep me updated." "But Susan." She paused, and I could almost hear her choosing her words carefully. "This doesn't affect Saturday, does it? Jennifer's party." I stared at the phone, not sure I'd heard correctly. "What?" "I just mean, if Ethan's feeling better by then, you'll still come, right? Jennifer has been so excited, and all my friends are expecting to meet their grandson. Mrs. Henderson specifically asked me to make sure you bring him." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Mom, I don't know if he'll even be out of the hospital by Saturday. But if he is, he'll need to rest at home. He won't be up for a party." Another pause. I could hear her sighing. "Well, let's just see how things go. I'm sure everything will work out fine." After I hung up, I sat there in stunned silence. Mike returned with coffee and took one look at my face. "What's wrong? Is it Ethan?" "No, he's the same. I called my mom." Mike's expression darkened. He'd never been my mother's biggest fan, though he'd always been polite for my sake. "What did she say?" I told him about the conversation, and I watched his jaw tighten. "She's worried about a party while her grandson is in the ICU. I think she just doesn't understand how serious this is," I said, but even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. Thursday was worse. Ethan's condition hadn't improved despite the antibiotics. His fever remained high, and he was barely conscious. The doctors were talking about more aggressive treatments. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten much. Mike and I were taking turns sitting with Ethan, but mostly we both just stayed. The nurses were amazing. They brought us blankets, encouraged us to rest, but how do you rest when your child is like this? Around noon, my phone started buzzing with text messages. Most were from friends who'd heard about Ethan, offering support and prayers. But then I saw one from my mom. "How's Ethan today? Jennifer is stressed about Saturday. Can you at least call her and reassure her that you'll try to make it?" I showed the text to Mike, and I've never seen him so angry. "Are you kidding me?" he said, loud enough that a nurse looked over with concern. I stepped into the hallway to call my mom back. "Mom, I got your text. I can't believe you're asking me this." "Susan, calm down. I'm not being unreasonable. I'm worried about Ethan too, but Jennifer has put so much work into this party. And the money we've spent." "Money?" My voice was rising. "You're worried about money while your grandson might have sepsis. Don't be dramatic. The doctors are taking good care of him. These things happen with children. But Jennifer's party is a once-in-a-lifetime event. It's a birthday party, Mom. There will be other birthdays. Not like this one. Sarah, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. All my friends are coming. The Hendersons, the Williamses, the whole book club. They're all expecting to meet Ethan and see what a wonderful family we have." And there it was. The truth I'd been trying not to see. This wasn't about Jennifer's happiness or even the money spent on the party. It was about my mother's image, her need to present this perfect family to her social circle. "Mom, my son is sick. Really sick. I don't care about your friends or your image right now. That's not fair, Sarah. You know I care about Ethan. Do you? Because you've asked me 4 times about the party and once about how he's doing." The line went quiet for a long moment. "I think you're being unfair," she finally said. "I'm trying to balance everyone's needs here." "Everyone's needs? What about Ethan's needs? What about mine?" "You're being selfish, Sarah. This isn't just about you." I hung up. I actually hung up on my mother, something I'd never done in my life. I stood in that hospital hallway, shaking with anger and hurt, and I realized that Mike had been right all along. My mother had always prioritized appearances over her family's actual needs, and I'd been making excuses for her my entire life. Friday morning brought a mix of good and bad news. The good news was that they'd finally identified the bacterial infection, it was treatable, and Ethan was starting to respond to the targeted antibiotics. The bad news was that it would be at least another 3 to 4 days before he could go home, and even then, he'd need weeks to fully recover. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in 3 days. Mike cried when Dr. Martinez told us Ethan was going to be okay. We both did. I was feeding Ethan some applesauce, the first solid food he'd been able to keep down, when my phone rang. It was Jennifer. "Susan. Mom told me about Ethan. I'm so sorry." For a moment, I felt relief. Finally, someone in my family was showing some perspective. "Thank you, Jen. It's been really scary, but he's starting to improve." "That's wonderful. I'm so glad." She paused. "So, does that mean you might be able to come tomorrow? Even for just an hour?" My heart sank. "Jennifer, he's still in the ICU." "I know, but if he's getting better." "Mom said you might be able to work something out. Maybe Mike could stay with Ethan while you come to the party. It would mean so much to me, Susan. And to Mom. She's been so stressed about this." I looked at my 3-year-old son, pale and weak, connected to 4 lines and monitors, and I felt something break inside me. "Jennifer, I can't believe you're asking me this." "I'm not trying to be selfish," she said quickly. This is my big day, and you're my sister. I want you there. Your big day." I repeated. "Jennifer, my son almost died this week. But he's going to be okay now, right? The doctor said so. He's going to be okay eventually. But he's not okay now. He's scared and sick and he needs his parents. I understand that, but... No, you don't understand. None of you understand. My voice was getting louder, and I stepped into the hallway again. Do you know what it's like to watch your child fight for his life? Do you know what it's like to wonder if he's going to wake up the next morning? Susan, please don't get upset. I am upset. I'm upset that my family cares more about a party than about my son. I'm upset that I've had to defend staying in the hospital with my sick child. I'm upset that no one has asked what I need or how I'm doing. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. We do care about Ethan. Do you? Because the only thing any of you have talked about this week is how my son's illness might affect your party. That's not true. Isn't it? Count the conversations, Jennifer. Count how many times Mom has asked about the party versus how many times she's asked about Ethan's medical care. I heard her sigh. Mom's just, you know how she is. She doesn't handle stress well. Neither do I. But I'm handling it because I have to. Because I'm a mother and my child needs me. I know you're scared. I'm not just scared, Jennifer. I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken that this is who our family really is. Saturday came, and with it, a flood of text messages. From Mom, getting ready for the party. Wish you could be here. Send pictures of Ethan looking better. From Jennifer, about to start getting ready. Still hoping for a miracle and you can make it. From various family friends, excited to meet your little one tonight. I turned my phone face down and focused on what mattered. Ethan was sitting up for the first time, playing with a small toy truck that one of the nurses had brought him. His fever had been gone for 12 hours, and his appetite was slowly returning. Mama, when can we go home? He asked, his voice still weak but clearer than it had been all week. Soon, baby. When the doctors say you're all better. Mike was stretched out in the uncomfortable chair he'd been sleeping in, finally getting some real rest now that we knew Ethan was going to recover. I watched my little family, my husband who hadn't left the hospital except to shower and change clothes, my son who was bravely fighting his way back to health, and I felt a clarity I'd never experienced before. Around 6 p.m., as Jennifer's party was starting, I got a call from my mom. Susan, the party's beginning, and everyone keeps asking where you are. What should I tell them? I looked at Ethan, who was watching cartoons on the tablet one of the nurses had lent us. Tell them the truth, Mom. Tell them that my son was critically ill this week, and I chose to stay with him instead of going to a party. You don't have to be so dramatic about it. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. People are starting to ask uncomfortable questions, Sarah. They want to know why you couldn't come for just an hour. And what are you telling them? I'm trying to protect you, but it's difficult when you're being so unreasonable. Something snapped in me. Protect me. From what? From people thinking you don't care about family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. People might think I don't care about family because I stayed in the hospital with my critically ill child instead of going to a birthday party. When you put it like that, you make it sound. I make it sound like what it is, Mom. The truth. Susan, please. Just tell me you'll come to the next family gathering. Tell me this isn't going to become a pattern. A pattern. She was worried that prioritizing my child's health might become a pattern. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Okay. If you had to choose between impressing your friends and taking care of your family, which would you choose? That's not a fair question. Yes, it is. It's the exact choice you asked me to make this week. She was quiet for a long moment. I would choose family, of course. But you didn't this week. You asked me to choose your social standing over my son's health. That's not what I did. That's exactly what you did. And the worst part is, I don't think you even realize it. The next day, Sunday, Mom and Jennifer came to the hospital. They brought flowers and a get well card that looked like it had been hastily picked up from the gift shop downstairs. Ethan was much more alert, chattering with Mike about the trucks he could see from his window. When my mom and sister walked in, he gave them a weak smile. "Hi, Grandma." "Hi, Aunt Jen." "Hi, sweetheart," Mom said, but I noticed she didn't come close to the bed. She'd always been squeamish around medical situations. "You look much better." Jennifer, to her credit, went right to Ethan and started talking to him about his toy truck. After a few minutes, Mom gestured for me to step outside with her. "The party was beautiful," she said. "Jennifer looked gorgeous. I wish you could have seen it." I stared at her. "How can you say that to me right now?" "I'm just saying it was a shame you missed it. Everyone asked about you." "Mom, do you hear yourself? Do you understand what happened this week?" "Of course I do. Ethan was sick, but he's better now." "He's better now, but for 3 days, we didn't know if he was going to be okay." For 3 days, Mike and I lived in terror. But everything worked out fine. That's not the point. I was fighting to keep my voice down. The point is that when I needed my family's support, all you cared about was a party. I did support you. I called every day. You called to ask about the party. You never once asked how I was holding up. You never offered to help with anything. You never even asked what the doctors were saying about Ethan's treatment. She looked uncomfortable. I knew you had everything under control. I didn't have everything under control, Mom. I was falling apart. I was terrified and exhausted and I needed my mother. I'm here now. You're here now because the party's over." We stood in that hallway, looking at each other, and I saw something in her face that I'd never noticed before. She genuinely didn't understand what she'd done wrong. In her mind, she'd been practical, reasonable. She'd been balancing multiple needs and responsibilities. But I realized that in her world, appearances and social obligations weren't just important, they were more important than everything else. More important than her daughter's emotional needs. More important than her grandson's health crisis. "Mom," I said quietly, "I love you. But I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" "Pretend that this is normal. Pretend that your priorities are okay. Make excuses for behavior that hurts my family." "I've never hurt your family. You hurt us this week. You hurt us every time you put your social image ahead of our actual needs." She looked genuinely confused. "I don't do that. You do it constantly. You did it when I got married and you spent the whole day worried about what the photographer was capturing instead of celebrating with us. You did it when Ethan was born and you complained that the birth announcement cards weren't fancy enough. And you did it this week when you asked me to bring my sick child to a party so you could show him off to your friends." Ethan came home on Tuesday. He was weak but improving every day. Mike took the rest of the week off work to help, and slowly, our little family found its rhythm again. My mom called every day, but our conversations were different now. Shorter. More polite. She'd ask about Ethan's recovery, and I'd give her brief updates. Neither of us mentioned the party or our argument. Jennifer texted me photos from her birthday celebration. They were beautiful, she looked happy, the decorations were gorgeous, everyone was dressed up and smiling. Looking at them, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a kind of detached observation. This was my family's world, and I realized I'd never really belonged in it. 2 weeks later, when Ethan was back to his normal, energetic self, Mom invited us to Sunday dinner. "Like old times," she said. I looked at my son, who was building an elaborate tower with his blocks, chattering to himself about dinosaurs. I looked at Mike, who was reading the news on his tablet, his feet up on our old coffee table. I looked around our modest living room, with Ethan's toys scattered everywhere and family photos on the mantel. "Thanks, Mom, but we have plans," I said. "What plans?" "We're having a quiet family day." There was a pause. "You can't avoid family forever, Susan." "I'm not avoiding family," I said. "I'm prioritizing it. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I'm not angry with my mom or Jennifer anymore. I've accepted that they are who they are, and they're not going to change. They live in a world where appearances matter more than authenticity, where social obligations trump personal needs. But I don't live in that world anymore. My world is morning snuggles with Ethan, family movie nights, quiet dinners where we actually talk to each other. It's showing up for the people I love when they need me, not when it's convenient or socially advantageous. It's choosing substance over style, every single time. Some people might think I'm being too harsh, cutting off my family over a party. But it wasn't really about the party, was it? It was about what the party represented, a lifetime of being asked to put other people's comfort above my own family's needs. So here's my question for you. When the people in your life show you who they really are, how long do you keep making excuses for them? How many times do you sacrifice your own values to maintain a relationship that doesn't actually serve you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to make a choice between family expectations and your own priorities? How did you handle it? Thanks for listening to my story. Give your loved ones an extra hug today. You never know when everything might change.